Welcome again to another Vet View program. My name is Leroy Davis Jr., and I am the Junior Vice Commander of the American Legion, Department of Alabama. And here today we're at the home of I.J. Wiggins, a World War II veteran. Mr. Wiggins served in the United States Army. He's a disabled veteran, and he's 96 years old. Look at him, how good he looks. And he lives alone. He still drives his big F250 tank out there. So Mr. Wiggins takes care of himself. Can you believe that? At 96 years old, he takes care of himself.
Well, just barely.
And we try to check on him and take care of him as best we can here at the American Legion. And we want Mr. Wiggins to just tell us, first of all, Mr. Wiggins, before we talk about any benefits, I want you to tell us about your tour of duty in World War II and what you did for this nation and how proud you are for what you've done.
I didn't volunteer into the services. I waited till Uncle Sam called me, and that wasn't too long after they began to talk about some of them. Now my brother, he volunteered in and wasn't in there no time till he done got a sergeant's rank, and I didn't volunteer, and I was in there for my full 3 years, and I finally got to be a whopping PFC after 3 years and about 84 months overseas over that way, and got to be a whole PFC along about the time the war part was beginning to be over with. So, but I was with the 1st Infantry Division, known to the Germans as the Bloody One or Red One. But most of the time they called it the Bloody One.
Big Red One.
Big Red, and never known to be a retreat. No such thing from the history of the United States Army. 1st Infantry Division never done no retreating whatsoever. And we even had orders, this sounds funny, but we even had orders that when we made the invasion there, if you see or know of somebody that gets scared and runs back, you are to shoot him down if he runs back, or gets coward and run back.
Was that Patton?
No, it wasn't Patton. It was General Omar Bradley.
Omar Bradley, okay.
Omar Bradley. About 3 days before then, but we was on the ship in the harbor, just on it is all. I guess they was getting ready for the paperwork. So about the second or third night we was on there, I felt the rudders, I could hear the rudders starting into working. And I told a friend of mine there, I said, well, we don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere. So they started out at night, and then the next morning we was approaching France over there. And about the first thing I noticed was our Air Force making strafing runs all on the beaches that way for about a 2 or 3 mile strip up and down that way. They was spraying it with bullets and dropping, they had 2 or 3 bombs on each plane. They was dropping those bombs and spraying it with bullets. So during that particular time then, our ship was moving kind of out towards the beaches, 2 or 3 miles away, something like that. A big battleship over behind us over that way, and then big old 18-inch guns was firing, some of those was, and boy, it would even shake the ship that we was on. And so they threw a rope ladder off the side of the ship that we was on, and it hanging down about 10 or 12 foot down the wall of it. It's a pretty good sized ship, probably about, give or take, 100 to 150 foot long, something like that. And they told us, and we had to go down this rope ladder, and the sailors are going to come and get you in a LCVP, Landing Craft Vehicle and Personnel. That's a little small boat, right, but we can put about 28 to 30 men into it, and you can put a couple of vehicles into it, ammo and stuff like that. So the Navy man said, now y'all get ready and get yourself hanging into this rope ladder, but don't jump until I tell you to. Says if you jump before I tell you to and you miss the boat here, it's rocking around a little bit, of course. You know, it's about 5 or 6 foot away from us, and it'd lunge up against the boat and then back out, you know, like that. He said if you miss this thing, you're going 60 feet down to the bottom. You're going 60 feet down if you miss this, and we won't never have a chance to get you back up threw that away. You be gone. So I made sure then that I held on to that rope ladder. Me and I can't remember the guy's name that was with me, all right, but we went down that rope ladder some, and then the Navy man said jump, and man, I leaped and like to knock another Navy man out of that little LCVP, like to knock him out on the other side.
So, in other words, you made sure you landed
I
in
made
the
sure
LCBP.
I made sure that I landed into it, and I'm talking like a big bullfrog. I just leaped like that. I leaped from it, and man, I hit over in there and passed by one Navy guy that was telling us to be sure to jump, you know. Passed by him like to knock the other one overboard out into the ocean out there, you know. So when we all got into that boat then and started to the shore, he said we was going that way then, already in the movements of it. And I don't know how deep the water was, probably not real deep, you know. Well, it has to be deep enough for that bigger ship to be floating out there. So it's pretty deep. He said 60 foot down. So he told us when we was going towards the beach over, they was already spraying at some with a machine gun. There was one machine gun sitting to my right, the way I was facing that way to my right at a kind of angle over in the French soil. It was a concrete bunker is what it was. Mm-hmm. And they had a slot in there about that wide that was big enough for that machine gun barrel to traverse. And in other words, to spray like this all the way across like that, where men was coming to the bank to spray on that, trying to kill us.
Trying to stop you all.
Yeah, all right. So now one guy, one of the boys with me, said that he told me he saw two concrete bunkers on there, but I didn't see but the one. One's all I seen. I kept my eye on it, trying to keep my head down below the water, but I couldn't do that. Couldn't stay down below the water for a second or two. The water was about up to my mouth, just about up to my mouth. Now and then some of that old greasy water would flop into my mouth while trying to walk, you know, and I'd have to kind of jump up a little bit and get some fresh air and then go back down, and that water started rolling back in the mouth, you know. So we was doing that, and those bullets was hitting. You can't imagine how these bullets would do. They sing when they hit the water. It didn't hit it just pow and then that's it. But it sing like, I mean, really sing, zing, 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 just like that. The bullets would when it hit the water, because it hitting it and glancing, you know, right. Hitting it and glancing. And of course, it was getting men, killing men, and ruining us, wounding us. A lot of times was going along that way. And I stopped to try to help one man that was having a little trouble with his struggling along into it, and the sergeant gave me orders to leave him alone, go on, and said, "You liable to be next." So I kept struggling to get to the bank, and somewhere after a while then, well, this was before we got out of the boat. In the boat, the Navy man said to us, he said, "Now you hear this, you clowns." That's the way they call you sometimes, you clowns. Right. You know, he said, "Now you hear this, you clowns." Said, "Now when I get as far as I think is safe for this little boat here, to not get hung up." Said, "I don't want to get this thing hung up out there in that machine gun working on us." But says, "When I get where I think it's as safe as far as I can go, I'm going to throw down this end gate," which was being peppered by machine gun, but it wasn't about to go through. It's a steel gate, you know, steel end gate. And so that machine gun was peppering it, and he says, "You clowns better get out of here whenever I let this end gate down. If you don't, I'm going to haul you back out into some real deep water before you get out again. So they'll put you out in that deep water." So I knowed we had to get out of there.
So let me ask you, through all of this, because we need to move on just a little bit, but when that gate went down and you hit the beach, take it from there for me.
Well, when the gate went down, of course, we just jumped out into the water. You didn't know how deep it was, but we're just hoping it wasn't over our head, because down the ways, just a little ways, was another portion of the 18th. I was in the 18th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Infantry Division. 1st Infantry Division has a patch of green one on the side, or red. I mean a red one with green patch with a red one into it on the side. And so when we leaped out into the water, you didn't know how deep it was then, because naturally the boat was floating. It hadn't got to no sandbar or nothing. And so leaped out into the water, and yes, Lord bless me, that water wasn't too much over my head. It's just come up about my eyes or something like that, and I was able to, and a wave passed by, I was able to get a little breath, you know. And we headed on to the beach, had about, give or take, I'd say 200 yards, or maybe 300 yards to go. And they had all kinds of these barricades, you've seen them in movies before, sticking up in the ground, and braces to them, and they're all booby-trapped. They got explosives to them. If you move that thing the least bit, it's to blow up and kill you, you see, kill the other guys going. So we were told about that too, so I went between those, went around. I might have touched one, but I didn't shake it none. So then I got to the beach then, and began going up a washout trail from water draining down. It was a big washout trail, about so wide, I guess it was, and about 3 foot deep, and the water run through that and drained down in the ocean, you know. And I got into that, and I crawled on up just about to the top, just about on the level part. And I remember, though, one thing I remember was there was a bush right about where I crawled up there and stopped at a bush, just a regular bush, 4 foot high or something like that. And all of a sudden, then a rifle cracks and a limb goes off that bush right over my head. And I said, wait a minute here now. This is a real thing. This ain't no play stuff. Shooting that limb off right over my head. And I said, this is a real thing. Get your head down from here, man. So I get my head back down from there then. About that time, my lieutenant hollered out there, said, men, this is a minefield out here. Said, you be extremely cautious, and when you come this way, he said, I've got a foot blowed off now. And I don't know if it's blowed all the way off. Anyway, he stepped on a mine, and that put him out of commission. He couldn't do nothing except just fall back and lay there, you know, till and he hollered for the, not medics, but hollered for the, well, I can't think of their name, combat engineers, I guess it was combat engineers, to come there and check for these mines. And he told us what it looked like. It was about the size of a nickel, and it was yellow on top, and it was placed in the ground, about level with the ground.
And you mean he did this even though his foot was blown off?
Right, right. He described it to us. I was about 15 or 20 feet behind him, and 2 or 3 other guys around that way. And both rifle men over in the woods behind, in front of us, in other words, front of us, because we're going towards woods across a little field out there, what it was, a little small field. Actually, I don't know whether it was a meadow or what it was. It was just a short grass. And he said, they're in the ground, and he says they just barely are seeable at all. He says, watch those little yellow things. So while I was going past him then, well, I remembered though looking for him, and I almost stepped on one that was about 6 feet away from him, the lieutenant, and about 6 feet away. I near about stepped onto it, but at that time of life, I had enough energy to make my foot go further. You know, and I just kind of says, get her going further, man. So I made a big step like this here, and I stepped over it, and I told the combat engineers, that's what I was trying to think about. I said, here's one right here behind me, side of me here, right in there. So they come over there, and they had special ways of working with it. I don't know nothing about that. So they got it out of there, and then they kept it going through there. Oh, yeah. So we made it to the beachhead, and waited till about dark. And then we started protruding across this field and getting into the woods and so forth, like into that, you know.
Let me ask you then, you made it to the beachhead, you got to the wood. When did the weather turn bad as far as the snow and everything? As far
as give or take the last of November, I would say probably the 22nd to the 27th. It began to snow, but it snowed 3 times. I believe it was snowed 3 times before it ever stayed. It snowed, and then it was warm enough for it to kind of melt off. And it snowed again as we protruded on. It snowed again, and it got a little bit thicker, heavier on the ground. I said 3 times, possibly might have been just 2 times, and then the third time, then it's period. It was snow from then on. It got to be as much as 1.5 feet deep, maybe even 2 feet. Well, in places it was. Drifts and low places was at least 2 foot deep.
Now, as we continue on, and as you have told me before, as y'all fought your way on, I recall you telling me about you had to roll a dead body over top of you in order to survive or not being killed in combat? Y'all was on a fight?
Well, I don't recall something like that exactly, but I do recall how one of our P-47 Thunderbolt planes, it's a deadly fighter plane, and it has one bomb onto it, or maybe more than that, and it has 4 machine guns, 50 calibers now, 50 caliber machine gun on those airplanes, and 2 of them is mounted on one wing and 2 on the other wing. So I was told by Air Force after the war sometimes, and that P-47 Thunderbolt came from the woods, over the woods, of course, when we had marched all night long, keeping it going that way, just going all night long. It just kept you going, no rest. And we got into a field over in through there, a kind of pasture and cow field, I guess, but I don't remember the cows. But we got over in that way. And one of our tanks, what is his name now? General Tank?
Patton.
Patton. General Patton had 3 tanks in supporting us and with us. And I don't know about the other 2, but one of them was parked under some big trees, kind of to my right side like this. And we had just come out of the woods. This was sometime the next morning, I guess it was, or it might have been the second morning, I don't remember for sure. But we'd been in the woods all night long, you know, coming through that way. And so the tank was parked out here, got that star on it, of course. One of our Jeep, we just had one Jeep that followed us with us, and that Jeep was over to here like this. So we went to the Jeep, and I said we'll go out here and get ammo and what have you, and refills. Your number one thing is ammo in the Jeep, and the next thing, I guess you'd say, is water. And the next thing would be your groceries. They come last onto it, if you get any groceries. So I don't remember us getting no groceries out of the Jeep. One Jeep for 200 men? No, not hardly. Well, I said 200, equivalent to that. The company is, I think, somewhere around 180 or 190, somewhere close to 200 is a company of men. So 3 of us, me and 2 other guys, one was John P. Brutka, a Russian guy. I couldn't stand him when we was in England. He was a gold breaker. He always went up around the line a half a mile long, and he'd find somebody he knowed and ease in, so he'd shorten the distance instead of him trailing on back.
Right, so he wanted to eat right away.
Yeah, he wanted to eat right away. So I didn't have no use for him hardly, but come wartime, it was a different story. He was all right then. So the men on the right, I don't remember him. We all fell down then because fell down on the ground because there was no place to get to. And the plane went over, like I said, it went over 2 or 3 miles, whatever he needed to turn around. And I didn't see him turn around because it's some big trees out here, not woods, just big trees out there. And so he went over that way. And then after a while, I heard the engine coming back, then I heard the roar from it. And I look up and see him coming. Well, coming, say, back this way here into us. And I told these 3 guys, 2 guys and myself, I said, and I didn't mean it seriously, boy. I said, hit the ground, men. I said, that plane there is going to strafe us, sure as everything. There was no place to run to. There was nothing around there but a hedge besides the tank, and it was too far away to run and get under it. And then besides that, he may have moved it and run over and killed you, you know. So we all hit the ground, and I could hear those bullets, and them 50 caliber bullets, I could hear them just thudding like you hitting it with a club, you know, like you was hitting the ground with a club.
And that was our own plane?
That was our own plane, but it was a mistake. What it was, they didn't have no computer system back then, and I don't think they had, and we had marched further than their maps showed that we was.
Oh, okay.
The maps showed that we were still in the woods, hadn't cut out of the woods. But when we were out there about 200 yards out of the woods or something like that, the plane come over and figured that we were Germans. It was daylight, but it wasn't sunup yet. It wasn't sunup.
The sun hadn't came up.
No, the sun hadn't come up, and it was kind of hazy a little bit, you know, with misty in the air like that, you know. So the plane, he just observed us as being Germans. So he went over yonder 2 or 3 miles before he could turn it around, you know, and he comes back and he opened fire on the, I saw him coming right low down, about 20 feet off the ground. I said, hit the ground, man, I said, he's going to strafe us as sure as everything is. Well, I didn't much more than get the word out of my mouth till, man, he cut loose with his 50 calibers. And now, mind you now, I was told, I don't know that, I was told by Air Force men that one trigger on there pulls all the machine guns at one time. They ain't got time to fool around and hunt for another trigger.
Right.
So one just takes care of all four of them at one time. 4 50 caliber machine gun. Now 50 caliber is about the size of my end finger here. The bullet is about that size.
The head of the bullet.
The head of the bullet is about the size, and the bullet, of course, the bullet long, about that long, you know. So 4 of those 50 calibers cut in onto us, and I could hear the roar. And well, the most thing I heard was the screaming noise from these 50 calibers, because they were right on to us as far as the distance and travel. It pointed right on to us, so you were getting a full blast of this. It's the screamingest noise that I ever heard in my life. It just near about tore my ears up. Then man, they were screaming like those screaming memes they talk about, you know. And
Mr. Wiggins, this is the first segment of many that we're going to be doing with you, talking about your experience in World War II. Okay. This is about a veteran's life. A veteran who served his nation, this country, in World War II, and right now he's 60% disabled. He needs medical help, and the VA is supposed to be sending a van out next week. Well, when this show comes out, he should have been and went to the doctor. So we're going to do a follow-up to check on the VA to ensure that they are picking him up, because he's 96 years old, and taking him to the hospital to get the treatment that he needs and that he so richly deserves, that he has earned from serving his country. Mr. Wiggins is 96 years old. He still has scrap metal in his body from World War II.
Oh, bullet right in here.
Right, and we want to ensure that he gets the help that he needs. His wife is deceased and gone on home to be with God ahead of him, yes. But he has a stepdaughter, and he has the American Legion that has his back, and we want to ensure that he gets the care that he so rightfully have earned and deserved. And thank you again, Mr. Wiggins, for being on Veterans View.
Thank you, sir.
And tune in again next time, and in the months to come, we will do a follow-up with Mr. Wiggins to ensure that he is receiving the care that he deserves from the Department of Veteran Affairs Medical Center, Tuskegee, Alabama. Thank you.